Hilchos Nedarim Perek Chi, the Laws of Vows, Chapter 9. The Rambam is going to tell us an extremely important rule about vows, and that's going to be the subject of the entire chapter. And instead of giving introductions, let's let the Rambam do the talking himself, because he gives it to us right in the first line. Says the Rambam, Halacha Aleph, B'Nedarim Haleich Achar L'Shoin B'nei Adam. When it comes to vows, you must follow the language of people. Ba'osei makom, uva'osei lashon, uva'osei zman, at the place, language, and time, shenadar einish baboy, when you made the vow or the oath. In other words, the meaning, how do we decide what a word means? There's no Torah-specific meaning of certain words. When it comes to vows, you have to ask the people in Sherman Oaks, in New York, in Europe, what do they mean by these specific words? And those specific meanings will guide the parameter or the scope of your vow. Ketzat. What does this mean? So the Rambam picks the first example using mevushal. Mevushal means cooked foods. Nadar nishba min ha-mevushal. If someone takes a vow or an oath that he's not going to eat cooked foods. So what's cooked? So the Rambam is going to talk about three types of cooking. You can cook in water and spices. That's classic cooking. Then you can boil. That's in water but no spices. And then you can roast, which is spices but no water. So what does mevushal, what does cooked refer to? If the place and the language and the time, the normal way is that they use the word mevushal, cooked, to describe even roasted and boiled. So his vow encompasses everything. He's forbidden to have benefit from any type of cooked food, cooked, roasted, or boiled. But if the word mevushal in this place, at this time, in this language is used only to refer to meat that was cooked with water and spices, then of course he's allowed to have roast meat, boiled meat, also smoked meat, meat that was cooked in the hot springs of Tiberias. Is that cook? Do you call that water cooking? And anything like that. We always follow the language of people in the city. In other words, Torah is not going to weigh in. Torah says, follow the local meaning. Another example, halacha beis. If someone takes a vow or an oath, he's not going to have benefit from salty foods. So what's salty foods? If people in this city, at that time, at that place, use the word salty foods to refer to all salted things, salted fish, salted cheese, things that were salted to preserve them. And then indeed, the vow encompasses everything. He's forbidden to have benefit from any salted food. But if their custom in the place and the time was only to call salted fish maliach, so of course he's only forbidden to have benefit from salty fish. Halacha Gimel, another example. Nadar nishba min ha-kavush. A person takes a vow or an oath, he's not going to have benefit from pickled foods. Im darkam likris kavush l'chol ha-kavushim. If the word kavush meant all pickled foods, everything that was pickled, hareza asur bakol. So then, of course, he's forbidden to have benefit from anything pickled. Pickled fish, pickled grasshoppers people used to pickle. So pickled encompasses everything. But if the normal custom is that you only call pickled a pickled vegetable, like today, I imagine you say pickle, everyone thinks of a pickled cucumber, you don't think of a pickled fish. Pickled fish is called pickled fish, not just pickled. So, of course, you're only forbidden to have benefit from pickled vegetables. And the same thing applies in all similar situations. Now, what do we do if in one place there is a variation of custom? Some of the people in this place call a certain object by a certain name, and other people in the country or in the region don't call it by that name. We do not, fascinatingly, follow the majority. Usually in Torah, when you have an argument, you follow the majority. Here you have some people in the city calling it this name, some people calling it that name. We don't follow the majority. Rather, it goes into the category of a doubtful vow. And the rule is that when we're in doubt about vows, we always go stringently. But if you transgress, you're not going to get lashes. So in other words, we're going to force you to stay away from more things, but we're not going to punish you if you don't stay away from that object that's in doubt. Ketzat. What would that look like practically? What would be an example where you could have a difference of custom in one city about an object? So the Rambam chooses oil. Nadar min hashemen. A person makes a vow, he's not going to have any pleasure from oil. B'makayim shemistapkin b'shemen zayis or b'shemen shumshemin. Now, in this place where he made the vow, people use always two types of oils: olive oil and sesame oil. Normally, or most people in this city, when they say oil, they mean olive oil. When they want to talk about sesame oil, they say sesame oil. However, but there are a few people, or a minority in the city. When they say stam, plain oil, they also refer to sesame oil. So in this locale, even though it's only a minority, but because some people use the plain word oil to also refer to sesame oil, the person who made the vow will be forbidden to benefit from olive oil and from sesame oil. But you're not going to get lashes if you have benefit from sesame oil, since most of the people don't use the plain word oil to refer to it. And the same thing applies in all similar situations. Now, here's a good way to know what's included in a term and what's not. Says the Rambam halacha vav, kol davar, anything, shaderech shliach ba'osei makayim lihimalech alav, that if you would send an agent to buy it, he would have to ask you whether that's what you meant. Harehu bichlal hamin shenemar l'shliach stam. So you can assume that it's included in the category if you tell an agent a plain word, and he would have to ask you if you meant this and this, that means that it's included in that category. Ketzat. What would that mean? So the Rambam is going to choose the word basar. Basar means meat, literally. But if you look in the picture, you can see there's really four types of things that can be included in meat. You have actual meat, actual steak. You have chicken. You have fish, and you have grasshoppers. So what is included in the word meat? So imagine you told a friend, go to the market and buy some meat for me. What if there was no meat? If there was only fish? Would he give you a call and say, hey, should I buy you fish? I know you said meat, should I buy you fish? If he would make that phone call, that means that in his mind, meat could mean fish. And so when you say meat, you're going to be forbidden even in fish. That's going to be the key. So the Rambam says, Ketzah, what would this look like? Makai, you have a place, Shadarkan, where their custom was. Im yishlach adam shliach liknis lebasar stam. If somebody sends an agent to buy him meat, plain meat, that's all he uses, the word meat. Amar loy matzasi ala dagim, and the agent will report back to say, I only found fish, should I buy you fish? So that means the very fact that he would ask the question means that meat includes fish. And therefore, if a person were to take an oath or a vow in this place not to have benefit from meat, nesar af bifsar dagim, he would also become forbidden to have fish. Anything similar would be under the same rubric. But in any place, if a person makes a vow not to have meat, he's certainly forbidden to have chicken and animal intestines, but he's allowed to have grasshoppers. In other words, chicken is for sure included in meat, grasshoppers is for sure not included in meat, and fish will depend on the custom of the local country. If somebody would consider fish to be like meat, then it's like meat. If not, then not. But remember the rule from yesterday, we always follow context. So if you were watching the person make the vow, and it's clear, the circumstances show when he made the vow, that when the person made the vow not to have meat, he clearly only meant steak, animal meat, or at least chicken and animal meat, or burnt animal meat, and then he's permitted to have fish, even if it's a place where an agent would have to ask the question, should I buy you fish? Since it's clear from the context of the vow that he only meant actual meat, so only actual meat is what becomes forbidden. Halacha zayin hanoider min hamavushal. If somebody makes a vow, he's not going to have benefit from cooked foods. Mutar bebeitza shaloi nisbashlad shekafsa ela nisgalgala bilvat. He's permitted to have what we call today a soft-boiled egg. It was cooked, not to the point that it was fully hardened, but it was simply soft-boiled. Because that's not included in cooked. For an egg, cooked means fully cooked. Haneider mimase kedera. If somebody makes a vow, he's not going to have any benefit from what's called mase kedera. Mase kedera literally means things cooked in a pot, but as the Talmud describes it, it means things that are boiled lightly in a pot. So then, einei asur ela midvarim shemartichin esan bikdera. He's only forbidden to have benefit from things that are typically lightly boiled in a pot. Kigoin rifais ulevivais, like groats and dumplings. Groats is like these little kernels that are cooked over here, and dumplings like what we call today knedlach, like matzah balls essentially. Those are things that would be forbidden by his vow. But if the word he used was, he says, I vow, I'm not going to have benefit from anything which goes into a pot. So then of course he's forbidden to have benefit from anything which is cooked in a pot, even if it's not things that are typically boiled lightly. It says that a person takes a vow to abstain from fish. Mutar bitsir uvemurias shal dagim. He's permitted to have fish brine and a dip that's made with fish oil. A person takes a vow to abstain from milk. He's allowed to have whey, which is like the liquid, the water that separates from the milk. A person takes a vow to abstain from whey. He's allowed to have milk. If he takes a vow to abstain from cheese, he's forbidden to have both salted cheeses and unsalted bland cheeses. Halacha tes. So here we're going to go into grains. In the Torah, there are 5 types of grains: chita or chitin, wheat, barley, spelt, oats, and rye. And we're going to be talking about specifically now wheat. In the Torah, there's 2 ways to describe wheat. One is in the singular, chita, and one is in the plural, chitim. The way the Rambam is going to understand this is that chitim, wheats in the plural, is a reference to wheat kernels, grain kernels. And chita, in the singular, is a reference to an entity that's produced from wheat. Okay, that's going to be the way we're going to be defining it over here. Therefore, says the Rambam, Haneider min achitim. If a person says, I am going to abstain from wheat, but he uses the plural form, asur bahen bein chayin bein mevushalin. He's forbidden to have benefit from wheat kernels, whether they're raw or cooked. Chita chitim shani tayim. But if he says, I'm not going to taste neither wheat in the singular nor wheat in the plural, asur bahen bein kemach bein pas. Then he's forbidden both to have pleasure from wheat flour or from wheat bread. Wheat bread is included in the word chita in the singular term. Chita shani tayim. But if he only uses the singular word, I'm not going to taste chita, asur ba'afoyul mutar lachais. He's forbidden to have benefit from baked goods from wheat, but he's allowed to chew raw wheat kernels. Chitim shani tayim. If he says, I'm not going to taste wheat in the plural, mutar ba'afoy va'asur lachais. He can eat baked wheat bread, but he cannot chew raw wheat, because the chitim in the plural means the raw wheat kernels. Chita chitim shani tayim. If he again uses the double language, asur bein ba'afoy bein lachais, he's forbidden whether it's baked or whether to chew. If somebody uses a more encompassing term, not wheat, but grain, dagan and tvua are both ways to say grain. The word grain encompasses only the 5 types of grain which the Torah recognizes. One is on the screen: wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye. But let's say not rice, not millet, or quinoa, all the other types of grains are not included in the 5 types of grain. Halacha Yud, says the Rambam, Haneider min hayarak. If somebody takes a vow not to have benefit from vegetables, mutar bidluim. Interesting. He's allowed to have benefit from squash. Squash is not considered a vegetable in this context. We mean greens. Haneider bikreshin. If somebody takes a vow from leek, mutar bekafloitos. He's allowed to have what's called leeks with a head. These are the 2 on the left side. This is a regular leek, creation. This is a specific type of leek. The scientific Latin word is porum capitatum. It also has a little head at the top. So, even though they're both, even though they're both called leeks technically, but because they have 2 different categories, so you vow from one, you're only forbidden from that one, not from the other one. A person takes a vow not to have benefit from cabbage. He's also forbidden to enjoy the water in which the cabbage was cooked. Because water used to boil vegetables becomes like the boiled vegetables itself. Nadar mimei hashlakos, mutar bashlakos atzman. On the other hand, though, if he makes a vow to abstain from the water in which the vegetables are cooked, then the actual vegetables he's permitted to have. Hanoider min haroitev, someone makes a vow not to have benefit from sauce, from gravy, mutar batavlin shaba, he's allowed to enjoy the spices, the raw spices in there. Min atavlin mutar baroitev, if he makes a vow to abstain from the spices, he can have benefit from the sauce, from the gravy. Hanoider min hagrisin, asr b'mikba shel grisin. A person takes a vow not to have sliced chopped beans, he's also forbidden to have porridge that's made from those split beans. Yud Aleph, hanoider min peiros haaretz. A person takes a vow to abstain from the fruit of the ground. Asur b'chol peiros haaretz, so he is forbidden to have benefit from anything which grows, any fruit of the ground. Umutar b'kmein upatrios, but he is permitted to have benefit from mushrooms and truffles, or fungi and mushrooms. Why? Because they don't, while they grow from the ground, they don't get nurtured from the ground, rather from the atmosphere. Amar, but if he says, kol gidule karka olai, anything, and he uses that specific word, which grows in the ground or grows on the ground is forbidden to me, then asar af b'kmein upatrios, he is forbidden to have benefit even from fungi and mushrooms. Even though they don't nurture themselves from the ground, they do grow in the ground. And so when you use the word gidul, which means to grow, it includes even the mushrooms and the fungi. Halacha Yud Beis, hanoider mi peiros hashana. If somebody takes a vow, he's not going to have any benefit from the products of the year, the fruits of the year. So, even though many, many things are produced each year, things that grow, things, animals, livestock, but the Rambam says the word peiros is going to be zoomed in to things that grow from the ground. Asur b'chol peiros hashana, he's indeed forbidden to have benefit from any produce which grows that year. Umutar bigdayim uvitloyim uvechalav uvebeitzim uvegazales. He could enjoy young goats, young sheep, milk, eggs, birds, even though they also grew this year, but they're not perot. Perot means produce from the ground. V'im amar, but if he said, kol gidulei shalna alai, anything which grew this year is on me forbidden, asur bekulam, then he's forbidden to enjoy them all. Haneider mi peiros hakayitz, if a person takes a vow, he's going to abstain from the fruit of the kayitz. So I know today kayitz translates as the summer, but kayitz also has a specific meaning of fruit that's harvested by hand. And therefore, ein asur ela bate'enim, it only refers to figs. And the only thing which he's forbidden to enjoy is figs. Halacha Yud Gimel, after giving us a bunch of these parameters, that Rambam repeats and doubles down. When it comes to all these matters, anything similar, he zahir ba'ikar hagadol. Be careful about the main great principle. Shehu, which is Nedarim halech achar l'shain b'nei adam sheba'isei makayim ba'isei lashen va'isei zman. When it comes to vows, follow the language of the people in that place, in that language at that time. And based on that principle, that's how you will rule as a rabbi and say, this man who made the vow is forbidden in this entity and permitted in the other entity. Halacha Yudaleh, the Rambam gives some more general parameters, and the commentaries here explain that even though, again, we're always going to follow local custom, but if there's no local custom, then you follow these laws. So we're going to have 6 examples. These are going to be the primary object, and the Rambam is going to talk about if they refer to the secondary object or not. Haneider min ha'anavim. So starting from the right. A person makes a vow to abstain from grapes. Mutar beyayin afilu hechadash. He can have wine, even if it's new, fresh wine, just came from the grapes. Doesn't matter. Grapes is not wine. Min hazeisim mutar b'shemen. A person takes a vow to abstain from olives. He's allowed to have olive oil. Min ha'tmarim mutar b'dvash tmarim. If he makes a vow to abstain from dates, he can have date honey. Min ha'sisvaniyos. Sisvaniyos are grapes, specific grapes that grow in the fall. Stav. Mutar b'chaymet sisvaniyos. He's allowed to enjoy the vinegar produced from those fall grapes. Min hayayin, if a person takes a vow to abstain from wine, mutar b'yayin tapuchim. He can have apple cider. Min hashemen, if he makes a vow to have oil, mutar b'shemen shumshemin, he can have sesame oil, as we saw before. Min hadvash, mutar b'dvash tmarim. If he makes a vow to abstain from honey, even though honey in the Torah, the word dvash in the Torah refers to date honey, but today it refers to bee honey, and therefore mutar b'dvash tmarim. You can eat the date honey, not bee honey. Min ha'chaymetz, a person takes a vow from vinegar. Mutar b'chaymetz sisvaniyos, is allowed to have vinegar made from the fall grapes. That's not regular vinegar. Min hayarak mutar b'yarkei sada. If he makes a vow from green vegetables, he can have vegetables that grow wild in the field. Because in all these cases, the secondary object has another name. And he only made the vow from the thing that doesn't have the extra name in that place. And the same will apply in all similar situations. There's one thing, the Shach and Shulchan Aruch says that the vegetables differentiation doesn't apply nowadays. Today, we don't care if a vegetable grows on its own or grows from planting. We call them all vegetables, so you'll be forbidden in them all. Halacha tezvav haneider min aksus. A person takes a vow not to wear clothing. Mutar besak uviyiriya uvachamila. He's allowed to wear sackcloth, coarsely woven thick fabric, or a thick sheet, usually used as a raincoat. Min habayi, as a person takes a vow, he's not going to go into a house. Asr ba'aliyah. He also cannot go into the second floor. Shah aliyah b'chal habayis, because the second floor is included in the house. Nadar min ha'aliyah mutar b'bayis. But if he only makes a vow not to go on second floors, he's scared of heights. I don't like second floors. He's allowed to go into a ground floor of a home. Min hadargash mutar b'mita. Person makes a vow to abstain from the dargash. Dargash was basically like what you see sometimes today in like homes, like in the master bedroom, they have a bed, right? And then on the edge of the bed is like a little couch that you can use to step on to the bed. So that's called a dargash. A person takes a vow, he's going to abstain from that small little step stool couch. He's allowed to go onto a bed, regular bed. Min hamita asur b'dargash. When a person says, I'm going to abstain from beds, he also cannot go onto that small little bed. Shehu kamay mita ktana, because a dargash is like a small bed. And so it's included in your vow. Halacha tezayin haneider shelo yikanis l'bayis zeh. Person makes a vow, I'm not going to go into this house. He can't go past the threshold. A person makes a vow, he's not going to go into the city. What's called the city? He can go into its Shabbos border, but he cannot go into its extensions. Way back when, in the Rambam's third book, the Rambam told us that every city has a tchum. It means you can walk outside the city 2,000 cubits, about 3,000 feet. But the city itself only considered to be ended after there's like a bunch of little structures that people would make these little huts outside the city. Any hut which is within 70 cubits of the city is considered to be ibur, like the pregnant belly, so to speak, of the city. And so the Rambam says the city begins by those little structures. You could go into the Shabbos limits, the tchum, but you cannot go into the ibur, the little huts or houses that are at the edge of the city. Halacha Yud Zayin hanoider hana mibnei ha'ir. A person says, I'm not going to have any pleasure from the members of the city. Bnei ha'ir. Who's called a member of the city? Says the Rambam, Uba adam v'nishtah hasham shnei masar chaydash. Any person who lives in the city for 12 months or more, hareza asar lehanes mimenu. You cannot have benefit from them. That's what it takes. To be a member of a city, you got to live there for a year. Pachas mikan mutter. Anybody who lives there less than 12 months, you cannot benefit from him. Nadar mi yoishvei ha'ir, but if the word you used was not bnei ha'ir, it was yoishvei, people who dwell in the city. So to dwell, to be called a dweller, takes less time. Kol sheshah hasham shloishim yayim, asur lehanes mimenu. The moment you were there for 30 days, you're already called a dweller, and you cannot benefit from him. Pachas miken mutter, less than that though, is permitted. Halacha yudches. This is a satellite picture. You can see how one main river, one main water channel, will ultimately split up into many, many little water channels. So the Rambam says, Haneider min hamayim hanimshachim mimayim pleni. A person says, I vow to abstain from water, any water that comes from this source. Let's say, for example, God forbid, he had a relative who drowned in that water. So he considered this water to be cursed. Okay, now he says, you know what, I'm done with this. Any water that comes from this river, I'm not going to have. Asur b'chol hanahares hayonkes mimenu. You're forbidden to have pleasure from any river which eventually comes from it. So you got to follow this basically all the river all the way down, and any branch off of that original source is forbidden to you. Certainly not the ones that directly come from it. You know, some of them go underground and come up later. Some of them come directly. They're all forbidden. Even though later on downstream their name has changed. People call them, by a different name. This is the river. This is the well. They don't attach it to the original source from which you vowed. Since that source is the root for this current river or well, you're forbidden to have benefit from everything. But if you made a vow specifically from a certain river, let's say here's the big channel, and you made a vow only from this little channel over here, or from the specific part of the source. So then, of course, ein asur ela b'chala nahares hanikrais al shmai. You're only forbidden to have benefit from any river which literally carries that name. Halacha yutes haneider miyerde hayam. A person takes a vow to abstain from people who travel at sea. Mutar b'yoshvei hayabasha, you're allowed to have benefit from anybody who lives on land. Miyoshvei hayabasha, but if you take a vow to abstain from people who dwell on land, asur b'yerdei hayam, you're also forbidden to have benefit from seafarers. Afal pishein mefarshin be'emtza hayam agad, even if they go for a big trip out into the Mediterranean Sea. Sheyerdei hayam bichlal yoshvei hayabasha, because people who travel onto sea are still included in those who dwell on dry land, because in the end of the day they come back home. Nadar meidayei chama, a person makes a vow. I'm going to abstain from anybody who sees the sun. Asur besumin, you're still forbidden to have benefit from blind people. You didn't mean people who literally see the sun. You meant anybody who could be seen by the sun, anybody who is exposed to the sun, any human being. Nadar mishcheirei haraish, a person takes a vow from black-headed people. I'm not going to have benefit from black-haired people. So, asur bekerchim u'balei seves, you're still forbidden to have benefit from bald people or people that have white hair, older hair, because you meant men essentially, people that usually have hair. Umutar benashim uviktanim, but you're permitted to have benefit from women and from children. But if the term black-haired people was applied to all people, asur bakel, then you're forbidden indeed to have benefit from many people. Halacha chaf, nadar mishayvse Shabbos. A person takes a vow to abstain from people who keep Shabbos. Asur b'Yisrael uvekusim. You're forbidden to have benefit from Jews and also from the Kuthians, the Samaritans. They also kept Shabbat. Nadar me'ele Yerushalayim. A person takes a vow to abstain from anybody who goes up to Jerusalem 3 times a year for the holidays. Asur b'Yisrael umutar b'kusim. Then you cannot have benefit from Jews, but you could have benefit from the Samaritans because they don't do their pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Unfortunately, they go to the different mountain that they believe in or whatever. You only meant people that it's a mitzvah for them to go to Jerusalem, not the kusim. A person takes the vow to abstain from Noahites. Even though we all come from Noah, even Jews, mutar b'Yisrael, you're permitted to have benefit from Jews. Because classically, Noahites means all other nations, Gentiles besides the Jews. Halacha chaf alif, nadar mizera Avraham. Here we see how the Jews are chosen people. A person takes a vow, he's not going to have benefit from the children of Avraham. Now, how many kids did Avraham have? 2, Yitzchak and Yishmael, right? From which the Arabs come. It says that Rambam, mutar bibnei Yishmael uvnei Esav. You're permitted to have benefit from all the Arab line and from all of Esav's line, who was Avraham's grandson. You're only forbidden to have benefit from Jews. Only Jews are called the offspring of Avraham. Shenemar, look at these verses. It says, Hashem promised Avraham, Ki biyitzchak yikarei lechazara. Through Yitzchak, it'll be called your offspring. V'harei Yitzchak amar leYaakov, and then Yitzchak passed on to his son. He said, V'gitin lechaz birkas Avraham. God will give you the blessing of Abraham. In other words, we are the only bloodline that is truly considered Avraham's descendants. Chav beis hanadar min ha'arelim. A person makes a vow to abstain from uncircumcised people. So even if you have a Gentile who might be circumcised, asur b'mulei oivdei kechavim u'mazales. You're forbidden to have benefit from all Gentiles, even the ones that are circumcised. And on the other hand, umutar ba'arlei Yisrael. You're permitted to have benefit from Jews, even the ones that happen to be uncircumcised. Because uncircumcised is a name for non-Jews. It's a synonym for non-Jews. Nadar min amulim, a person makes a vow to abstain from circumcised people. So it goes the opposite way. Asur ba'arlei Yisrael. He's forbidden to have benefit from all Jews, even the ones that are uncircumcised. Umutar b'mulei oivdei kechavim u'mazales, and he's permitted to have benefit from even the circumcised Gentiles. She'ein ha'arla kruya ela l'shem oivdei kechavim u'mazales, because the word arla, foreskin or uncircumcision, is a name in Tanakh for idol-worshipping Gentiles. Shenemar, as it says, Yirmiyahu and Navi said, Ki kol hagoyim arelim. All Gentiles are uncircumcised. When a person says, I don't want to have benefit from people that have a bris, he means people that have the obligation to have a bris, not people that don't have the obligation at all. A person takes a vow, he doesn't want to have benefit from Yisrael, from Jews. Asur begerim. He's also forbidden to have benefit from converts, because converts are part of the Jewish people. But if he only says, I don't want to benefit from converts, then he's permitted to have benefit from all other regular Jews. Haneder mi Yisrael, a person uses again the word Yisrael, general Jews. Asur b'kohanim u'leviim. He's also forbidden to have benefit from kohanim and leviim. They're also part of the Jewish people. Min ha'kohanim min ha'leviim mutar b'Yisrael. But if you only say I don't want to have benefit from kohanim and Levites, then you're permitted to have benefit from regular Jews. A person takes a vow to abstain from Kohanim, mutar b'Leviim, he can have benefit from the Levites. If he vows to abstain from the Levites, he can have benefit from the Kohanim because they're different categories. A person takes a vow to abstain from his kids, he could have benefit from his grandkids because grandkids are not kids. In all of these matters, din haneider v'hanishba echad, who the laws governing vows and oaths are exactly the same. The major principle of always follow the colloquial meaning, follow what people had intended to mean in that place, in that language, in that time.